looking at your book and you see the dy dx, that means y prime. So, with that being said, I'm going to write it up here. Dy dx is equal to y prime. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that before we get started.
And the dy squared and dy
That's the y double prime, yes.
Yeah.
Anytime you see that, that means double prime or triple prime. Now, when you're given an equation, x squared, or x to the fourth, plus y to the fourth is equal to 2. This is when you're going to be using implicit differentiation. As I said, next to the basics, on a scale from 1 to 10, implicit differentiation is about like an 8 or a 9 as far as importance. Basics is a 10. Implicit differentiation is right up there with the basics. And what you want to do you remember when we did y is equal to x squared? And I asked you to find the inverse, and you switched x and y like that. Then you solve for what? Y, and you got y is equal to the square root of x. You remember doing that? Okay, well, you're going to kind of do that with this, except you're not going to put an x and a y. You're not going to switch them, but you're going to put a y prime in there, and you're going to solve for y prime. So basically, that's what you're going to be doing. Implicit differentiation is inserting a y prime and solving. Now, not all the time are you going to be able to solve in one step, so you're going to have to fall back on what? Algebra or calculus? Algebra, to solve for that y. Okay? This is when we found the inverse back in algebra. And we switched the x and the y, and then we solved for y. So over here, whenever you take the derivative of y, you're going to put a y prime beside it. So, go through and take the derivative. 4x to the third plus 4y to the third, and then I'm going to put right beside it in blue a y prime. Equals what? 0. Now solve for y prime. Go ahead and do that, because we're done with the calculus.
So is y prime part of the term?
Yes. You can't, since you're taking the derivative of, you're used to taking the derivative in respect to x. Remember, all the problems we've been doing has been in respect to x. This is not y is equal. This has got y in it. Okay? Now, could you solve for y and then take the derivative of it? Yes. Do you want to? That would probably be a hell to the no, because it would be very difficult. Because you would get the fourth root of something, and then you would have to take the fourth root of something. That would be something to the 1/4 power, and then you'd have to use the chain rule. But it could be done, but it's not desirable. So what do we get? Well, let's, how do you get rid of positive 4x to the third? Minus 4x to the third, or take it across the what? The river. And it becomes a negative 4x to the third. So now we've got 4y to the third. I should use posters. Y prime is equal to negative 4x to the third. Divide by 4y to the third. Divide by 4y to the third. And that's going to give you y prime is equal to negative x to the third over what? Question. And you could, y to the fourth is equal to negative x to the fourth plus 2. With me? Right? And y is equal to the fourth root of negative x to the fourth plus 2, and y is equal to negative x to the fourth plus 2 raised to the what? 1/4 power. And then you could go in and do the chain rule. Let's see what we get, because I don't know if it will work out. We'll have to do a lot more algebra. 1/4 negative x to the fourth plus 2. 1/4 minus 4/4 is negative 3/4. And then negative 4x to the what? Third? Yes or no? And then that negative 4 and that 1/4 is going to cancel, and you're starting to see that x to the third right there, but it's going to be a lot more math. So it's easier just to do implicit differentiation. Now what if I give you, find the equation at 1 and negative 1. Let me see if I got that right. 1 and negative 1. So what's the slope at 1 and negative 1? Well, that's going to be 1, because you got to plug the 1, and then the 1 be a negative 1 be a positive 1, so your answer should be positive 1. All right, let's do another. Now again, I'm assuming that there's people in here that's never seen this before. Okay, so if you're a water walker, then just be patient. Let's do another. I'm going to do several of these. X cubed plus y cubed is equal to 8. All right, do that one. We'll get to the nasty ones in a minute. So, Miss Sterling, just wait, okay?
I can't. I'm going to explode.
I know. Give y'all a minute to work on it, get it all the way down, simplified. Shouldn't take you but 3 or 4 steps. And if you can't do it, then I guess we can chalk that up as, being a disappointment. Can't say a failure because you've made it this far, so can't call you a failure. We can call you a disappointment.
I thought you were being awfully nice with us. You used to say that we should just quit and go home, and now you're saying
I'm waiting to see the scores on that test. I'm waiting for that. So we get 3x squared plus 3y squared with a blue y prime, and that's equal to 0. Does anybody know what the most famous error students make on implicit differentiation? You would think it's they forget to put the y prime. Nope.
Not closing out that the integer.
The 8.
Right, actually bring it down.
Yeah, the 8. You talking about the 8?
Yeah.
The 8. They forget to take the derivative of 8. And buddy, it will cause you all kinds of heartache. Because you'll go back and you'll say, well, I took the derivative of this. I took the derivative of that, and I put my y prime. Why am I not coming up with it? You left the 8 there. Don't do that. Okay? So that's going to be 3y squared. You know, if I had training, I bet I could make one pen write one color and another pen write another color. But I haven't had training, so. 3y squared y prime is equal to Mr. Swords, are you there?
I am.
I haven't got my things put on yet.
Well, I was going to actually get on there yesterday morning with her on the Polycom and help her out with it.
Oh, so she don't know how they go on.
Right. And I was going to talk her through it, and then she said she had to go out to Pendleton, so I haven't heard back.
Okay. All righty, well, thank you. 3y squared y prime is equal to negative 3x squared divided by 3y squared, 3y squared, and y prime is equal to negative x squared y squared. Now, we're doing two similar problems, and yes, you're going to see a lot of times they're going to factor out, but a lot of times they're not. So don't try to patternize implicit differentiation. I'm trying to show you the basics of implicit differentiation. And as you can tell, only 10% is what? Calculus. The only calculus you got right there is the second step. The rest of it is algebra. So let's do a nerd one. This one will probably make you quit. And it's not very difficult. I just added another term to it. X squared plus 2xy plus y squared is equal to what? So some of you are already saying what? Just quit. Why? There's too many what? Too many terms. Which one should you be saying, hold on a minute? Which one should you be saying, hold on a minute?
Find the derivative of the 2xy.
The xy. You don't have to worry about the 2 because you pull the 2 out. It's a constant.
Right.
But the xy, what rule?
Still.
Well, x times y, you would use the what?
Product.
I heard
Product.
product. Thank you. You gotta enunciate, especially on Skype, because all I heard was
Sorry.
okay. And I don't speak whisper, and I don't speak mumble. So you got to articulate, especially if you're coming from one of the other campuses or Skyping in. So whoever that was, I heard a little bit of it. Yeah, the XY, you're going to use the product. So go ahead and do it. I'll do the 2. That'd be 2x and 2y. I'll do that for you. Now you do the rest of it. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. Let's see, what time is it? It is, all right, I'll give y'all a minute to get started on it. Or at least till the second hand gets on the 8. I'll give you a little bit more time. Miss Iabi, did you come back? Evidently, she did not. That was at 3:37, so she wasn't been waiting too long. Miss Iyabi, what happened?
I lost connection.
Oh, okay. Just curious, are you on your phone, or are you on at work, or what device are you using?
A phone. I think I'm using data. That's probably why.
Oh, okay.
Should you ever put the constant back in? Or does it?
Yeah, you can distribute it after you do it. It's just easier without the constant. I mean, you don't have to. You can pull it out and then distribute it back in. So we got 2x plus 2 times, and I'm just going to put this in blue, xy, because we're going to come back to that. Sorry. Plus 2y times y prime is equal to 0. And that's going to give us, I'm going to come right here, and I'm going to do first times the derivative of the second times plus the second times the derivative of the first. And that's that little area right there. That's that. Okay? So I'm going to clean that up, and that's going to give me x, y prime, plus y. I'm going to put that in brackets, and then I'm going to bring everything down. I just did the blue part there. So it's going to give me 2x plus 2 times that plus 2y times y prime is equal to 0.
I think you
Mr.
forgot
Swords,
the
you need to find 2 things out for me. You need to find out if I can configure another stylus to a different color, and
All
find
right.
out how to make the eraser top of the eraser. I've done it before, but I don't remember how I did it.
All right, I can do that.
Okay. Yes, sir.
When when you do the
Product rule.
for the x and y, how do you get the y derivative into the term?
Whenever you take the derivative, implicit differentiation of y, whenever you take the derivative, you have to put a y prime beside it.
So
First times the derivative of the second. What's the derivative of y? 1. But I took the derivative of y, so I got to put a y prime beside it. That's the rule.
Okay,
Period.
that's what the rule is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now I'm going to use, because, am I done with the calculus? Yes. The rest of this is nothing but what? Algebra. So I'm going to take my handy dandy 2x plus 2xy prime. I'm going to put that in blue, sorry.
Did you
I'm
forget
doing that
the,
for y'all.
time-
I'm not doing it for me.
multiplication rule?
So that's going to be y prime, and then plus y, plus 2y, plus 2y, y prime is equal to okay, make sure I didn't make a mistake. I think I distributed the 2.
I think you forgot the x prime in the multiplication rule. I could be wrong
X, the derivative of x is 1. You're talking about right here?
Yeah.
The derivative of x is 1.
Okay.
Just to make sure, I appreciate you checking. Here it is.
I would have just put 1 on the other side of y.
First times the derivative of the second. First times the derivative of the second plus the second times the derivative of the first. Okay, look what we got down here. So, this is where students go, oh, well, what do we do now? Well, what do you do if you have 2 x's and 2 y's and you're solving for y? What do? Algebraically. You get all the what's on one side. You get all the y's on one side, you get all the x's on the other. We're in pre-algebra now. So what are you going to do with that 2x and that 2y? What are you going to do with them? Take them over to the other side. Why? Because you got to get what by itself? Not y, but what?
Y prime.
Y prime. That's why it's blue. You got to get y prime by itself. So think of y prime as the variable you're solving for and use your algebra skills to get that y prime by itself. Do it. Because there's no more calculus. Miss Sterling, are you daydreaming?
No, I have really bad allergies.
No, you still got allergies? You know, tequila does wonders with allergies. That's a joke. I'm kidding. Huh?
I said I'm sorry if you have allergies.
Somebody's going to say I told them to drink now.
No, they tested me for 50 common allergens, and I'm allergic to 48 of them. So
Okay.
I'm allergic to everything.
Yep. I had an ex-mother-in-law like that. All right. So I'm going to take this guy. In fact, I'm going to take my red highlighter. You can hardly ever see me. I'm going to take this guy and this guy and move them over. Why? Because they ain't got a y prime in them. So I'm going to take them across the river. And that's going to give me 2x y prime plus 2y y prime is equal to negative 2x minus what?
2y.
All right, finish it. Remember, you're not solving for x or y in implicit differentiation. You're solving for what? Y prime. That's why I make the y prime blue. Now, in pre-algebra, when you have the two variables in two terms, the common variable, what can you do to get that a single variable? Starts with F. A, C, T.
Fact.
Fact. That was funny. Who did that? Fact. O. Factor out a common term. Now, you're thinking the right way. Factor out a common term. What's in common with 2xy prime plus 2y prime? You're trying to solve for, you could factor out of 2, but what are you solving for?
Y
So what's
prime.
in common with both of them?
Y prime.
So factor out the y prime. Y prime, parentheses, and that's going to leave you with 2x plus 2y equals negative 2x minus 2y. Now, how do I get rid of multiplying by quantity 2x plus 2y? Divide by 2x plus 2y. Divide by 2x plus 2y. And we get y prime is equal to, I'm going to factor out a negative 2. And that's going to give me what? X plus y. And I'm going to factor out a positive 2. And that's going to give me x plus y. And what happens? What's the derivative of all of that mess? Negative what?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. Now, one of the reasons I picked this problem is to show you these first two steps right here. I'm going to do this I'm going to circle it in Verde. These two steps, I guess you could say, right here. There's your calculus. The rest of it is algebra. Hopefully, by the time we get out of Unit 2, you will understand why people fail calculus. I know I've been saying it over and over and over and over and over, but some of y'all are kind of stubborn, and you're trying to, make it harder than it is, because I know students, and the only reason you're making it harder than you is because you suck at algebra. So let's do an error. Now that means you don't supposed to say anything, okay? I'm just saying that in a generic sense. Don't raise your hand and say, "You're talking about me." You need to be quiet. Good. Nobody's saying anything. What a surprise. Y'all suck. Of xy minus y cubed is equal to 8. There's that dang old xy again. You could erase one of them, erase the y. Yeah, just erase the y. Accidentally, say that you wrote it down wrong. Give you a couple of minutes. I'll do the first line for you, just in case you really suck at this one. 5 x y minus I'm going to go ahead and take the derivative of this one and use my green. So that's going to be 3y squared. And then take my blue marker, y prime, is equal to what? 0. Now, since I got to do my blue because that's not done yet, so I'm going to take my green marker and first, hold on, first times the derivative of the second. So the derivative of y is 1, y prime, plus the second times the derivative of the first. That's supposed to be in green. There we go. And that y prime is supposed to be in blue. This a poster would be a whole lot easier. Okay, if I could find a poster board, they didn't sell it anymore. All right, so we're going to rewrite this 5, and then I'm going to put this in brackets because I want to keep it until I'm ready to simplify. X, y prime, plus y, and then minus 3y squared y prime is equal to 0. There you go. And I need to add blue here. There we go. There you go. Dang old poster. Finish her out. Five x 5y plus y prime. All the things I do for y'all. Minus 3y squared y prime is equal to 0. Now what are you going to move?
So you're 5y.
You're going to move the 5y over because 5y doesn't have anything in it that you want. I know that sounds awful, but you're going to move this guy first because he doesn't have anything in there. So he goes across the river and he becomes a negative 5y is equal to 5x minus 3y squared y prime and y prime. Now what? I'll put this in red. Just do not pronounce it. Factor out a common what? Term. Y prime, parentheses, 5x minus 3y squared is equal to negative 5y. Divide by 5x minus 3y squared. 5x minus 3y squared So y prime is equal to negative 5y over 5x minus 3y squared. Ready for nerding? We still on 1 through 5 difficulty. We haven't got to 6 through 10 yet. But this is a prime example of crawling before you walk. In implicit differentiation, you got to make sure you can crawl before you can walk. 36 is equal to the square root of x squared plus y squared. Now, radicals in calculus don't what? So you need to get rid of that radical. How do you get rid of the radical?
Square the side.
Square both sides. You were thinking of rational exponent. That's not going to help you. It would make it longer. I mean, you could do it, but it would make it longer. So I'm going to square. I'm going to take my handy dandy dang old fuchsia. It says purple, but that ain't purple. And I'm going to raise this to the second power, and I'm going to raise this to the second power. Why do I not care about raising both sides? Anybody want to answer that question? Well, it's going to get rid of the radical, but why am I worried about it being a 72 on the left? You're going to take the derivative, and it's going to what?
It goes away.
It's going to zero it out, so you don't really care. So I'm going to get 72 is equal to
Well, it's 1296.
x squared. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's zero. Just write down.
I got to do it right. What is it?
It's 1296.
1296. I multiplied it by 2. 1296 is equal to x squared plus y squared. Okay, now do your thing. Because this is just like the problem we did at the beginning. This is an example of, do you know how to do implicit differentiation, or do you know how to manipulate? It's how you know that this, do you know how to manipulate? Because a lot of people would rewrite it to the 1/2 power, and you could do that, but then you'd have the chain rule, and then you'd have the chain rule with implicit differentiation in it, which you could do, but that's whips and chains.
Does the y prime always follow the y?
Always.
Okay.
That's the whole thing of implicit differentiation. Just like completing the square is take b divided by 2 and square it. You can't do completing the square without that. You can't do implicit differentiation by not putting the y prime. People put dy over dx, but I don't do that.
Yeah, I was saying, but the y prime always follows the y, or is it just always follows the last?
Always follows the y.
Okay. So it was,
When you take the derivative of y, because you're used to taking the derivative of x, y is supposed to be by itself.
okay.
You know, y is equal to mx plus b,
Yeah.
but it's not always going to be that way. Yes, sir.
So if you took the derivative of y to the power of 1, and it would be
1 times y prime.
1 times y prime. Okay.
Yeah, just go.
That's why in those problems we did before, you see me put the 1 and then I put the y prime because I'm taking the derivative. Fun when you get the second and third derivative, because then you have to take the first derivative and plug it back in where it says y prime. So we're going to get there. And that would be like a number 9 or 10. So 0, I'll do that one for you, is equal to 2x plus 2y, y prime. Negative 2x is equal to 2y, y prime. And of course, if you're saying, why did he show you this? This was easy. He should have showed us this first. No, because you got to learn how to take the implicit differentiation before you learn how to manipulate. And the whole part of calculus is manipulation. That's the one thing about calculus that people don't understand. When you take four classes of calculus, what is it that you have learned? One thing, manipulation. That's what you've learned. You've learned to take something, turn it around, twist it about, and get the same thing that you got before, the same thing that you started with. That's what calculus does. It takes that part of the brain and says, okay, how can I manipulate this problem? How can I take it apart, put it back together, and it do the same thing that it's done before? And that's what you're doing. So, anyway, along with finding the particle in space, but we won't talk about that. Divided by 2y, the 2's cancel, and y prime is equal to negative x over y. So that problem was not implicit differentiation. That problem was what happens when you have a square root. Do you write it as a rational exponent, or do you square both sides? Now you know, square both sides. But if you was to do, that'd be 1/2 times x squared plus y squared to the negative 1/2 times 2x plus 2y, y prime. And then, of course, you can see where it can get really nasty by doing that. This one is not much more difficult. It's got the product rule in it. Y is equal to x e to the y. And you don't have to worry about the y on the left. Just, you can disregard that. Just do the. Yeah, that would.
It goes to y prime.
Yeah, let's just not do that. Let's just do that. X e to the y. And you're just going to take the implicit differentiation. No, it says leave it at that. I wrote it down right. Because if you take the derivative of y, you're going to get 1 times y prime. So that's right. You can. This is supposed to be this. I'm sorry. Y prime. Y, not y prime.
Well, 1 times y prime is still y prime.
No, y is equal to that. And now I'm going to take the derivative of y. That's going to be 1 times what? Y prime is equal to first times the derivative of the second. Well, the derivative of e to the y is what? E to the y, but y prime. You got to put that in there. Put that right there. Plus the second times the derivative of the first, which is, what's the derivative of x? 1. Okay, now simplify it and solve. Now you see why I give this as a separate test. It's kind of like partitioning a hard drive. You You separate one from the other. And I figure if I put a test in there on the basics, then that'll help out when you do this test. This one won't have very many problems on it. I just want to kind of separate the two. Y prime is equal to x y prime e to the y, or however you want to write it. I'm going to rewrite it e to the y same way. Y prime plus e to the y. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my e to the y's on the same side. So I don't care how you do it. I mean, not e to the y's, the y prime. So this is going to come over here. So y prime minus x e y prime is equal to, that's supposed to be black. I'm trying to do this where y'all see where is equal to e to the y. And what do you do when you have factored out the y prime times 1 minus x e to the y is equal to e to the y, and of course divide by 1 minus x e to the y, and 1 minus x e to the y.
Is that simplified? Is that simplified?
No, because you'd have to divide that b. Now you could pull out the e to the y, but that would leave a 1 over e to the y minus x, and then you could cancel it out. You still have a fraction in there. Now this one you can do two ways. Let me check the time before somebody explodes. Okay, is it time?
10 after.
Oh, it's 10 after. Okay. I don't want anybody to explode. So try this one. Now there's two ways to do it, and I'm not going to tell you that either way is wrong. You're going to get the same answer. And this is a trig function. So get your trig card out. Tan of xy is equal to 7. Okay, so take a minute, pull out your derivative of your trig functions, pull that out if you hadn't memorized them yet. But the derivative of tan is what? Starts with s. Secant squared. But what else we got to use here, folks? Let me give you a hint. I shouldn't give y'all so many hints. I should make y'all. What are those called? Parentheses, Hubert. That's right. What did I tell you? Always should click when you see parentheses.
Chain rule.
Good job. I'm so happy somebody listened. Chain rule. So you've not only got to use your trig function, which is just memorization, but you've got to take the derivative of what's inside, which is xy, which we've done like 3 times so far. You know, first times derivative second plus second times derivative first. Because it's in parentheses. So go ahead and do that. I'll take the derivative of 7 for you. That'll be 0. That blonde-headed guy about the women's soccer, is that the coach? Yeah, the women's soccer, is that the head coach?
Makes sense, 'cause, you know, it's a women's
That woman, huh?
team. It's not a dude.
Oh, it's not? Well, she can go to hell too. If she can't stand for the flag and she can go to hell too. Yeah, tell her to go to Pakistan. Go live in Pakistan, Iraq if she wants to. Iran. Everybody should serve in the military, Peace Corps, mission field in the third world country for 1 year when they graduate high school. By God, you wouldn't have these people.
To visit, no?
No, visit. They need to spend a whole freaking year over there.
I saw enough over there. Just like a week. I mean, a week I saw enough.
When I got back from Desert Storm, I said to myself, I will never leave the good old United States unless I absolutely positively have to. Seeking?
Yeah, but you went to complete shit. I mean,
it was pretty bad. I was over there for 10 months.
I was over there for only 9 months there.
That wasn't fun. X, Y, and then I'm going to take my handy dandy blue marker. First times the derivative of the second plus the second times the derivative of the first. I'm getting tired of going back and forth from black and blue, so y'all just have to see it, okay? Equals, I told you I'd do 7 for you, 0. Now at this point, there's 2 directions you can go. Let me show you what I mean. What if I gave you 2 times x plus 1 is equal to 0? Let's go back to our pre-algebra. What if I gave you that? What could you do? There's 2 things you could do. I could divide by 2 on both sides, right? Or I could distribute. Write that down. At this point on this problem, you can divide by the secant squared of xy, or you can distribute. I'm going to distribute because it's a whole lot easier to divide. So I'm going to distribute. So that's going to give me, I'm just going to write secant squared xy, secant squared xy equal 0. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to put in parentheses here, I'm going to put xy prime. And here I'm going to put y times y. Okay, everybody see what I did? And there's supposed to be a plus there. Now, you bring that out to the front. You'll bring the xy prime out to the front. And that's going to be x, y prime, and y. And then secant squared xy plus secant squared xy. And of course, which one does not have the y prime in it? This one. So you're going to move it over. How do you get rid of plus all that stuff? Minus all that stuff. You do it on one side, you do it what? On the other. So x, y prime, secant, oh shoot. After this problem, I'm going to quit with the going back and forth. Secant squared xy plus, equals negative y secant squared of xy. And now I'm going to divide by what? X secant squared xy. X secant squared xy. And what happens to the secant squared xy's? They cancel, and you're left with what? Negative y over x. Now, what if you divided by secant squared of xy on both sides? You get the same thing. So go over here, divide by, let's do it in orange. Okay, divide by secant squared xy, secant squared xy, and that's going to leave you with xy prime plus y is equal to what? 0. Xy prime equals negative y. Divide by x, y prime is equal to negative y over x. Same answer? Yes. Manipulation. You're manipulating. Okay, I better call it a day because somebody's going to go into convulsions if I don't. What time is it? Yeah, we better go ahead and call it. We still got another 4 or 5 pages to do. Okay. So, when's the homework due? Going to test?
30th.
I'm sorry, what?
30th.
The 30th. So everybody's got till Sunday to get all that done. I did put homework up tonight, but I would probably not suggest working on that till probably after you finish the test or the homework or both. Okay? Let me turn the order off and do the roll.